In this episode, we explore how fragrance is elevating product experiences, influencing mental well-being, and creating new opportunities for brands to connect with their audiences. We speak to leading commentators to get their take on the future of aroma, showcasing the disruptors and the visionaries.
So, what's the deal with Liquid Death pulling out of the UK?
Well, officially they're calling it a pause, but it's definitely a moment for reflection for marketeers here. This was a brand that many pointed to as the masterclass in cutting through noise.
For sure, Mike Cesario and his team built something truly unique in a crowded market. And let's not forget Andy Pearson, their creative director, has been fearless in pushing the brand beyond just another liquid refreshment proposition. He's on record saying the brand's real competition wasn't other beverage brands, but the endless stream of content in our social feeds.
Yeah, lots of debate here, Caitlin, and I think what's surprising is how little of it calls out product experience as one of the likely causes of the brand's exit. You know, when you got brash titles like Mango Chainsaw Iced Tea, these set certain expectations. You'd expect that liquid experience to be sensorially cutting, spiky even. Instead, it was described to me as being lightly flavored soda. And this really got me thinking about the dangers of hype. In fact, I've just written a piece for the MMR website called Hype Kills. My central point here is that when a brand arrives suddenly in a blaze of coverage, I think people instinctively label it as the latest fleeting trend, something to watch but not to invest in. So in some cases, it might be better for brands to arrive more slowly, a carefully controlled distribution strategy that expands gradually over time.
You might have something there, Mr. Wardlaw, but we must head into our main feature and the role of fragrance in all of our lives. Welcome to Fabulously Fragrant Futures. I'm Caitlin McLean, stationed for this episode in Tokyo.
And I'm Andrew Wardlaw, keeping continuity here in London.
Have you subscribed yet? Because that selfless act can help us reach the attention of other industry professionals like yourself.
All hail that algorithm, Caitlin, and we welcome our new subscribers, and we really do appreciate that. It's no surprise that our last episode adapting to Ozempic has got people talking.
It really has, so stick around for an update on that at the end of the show. But things are about to get a little fragrant around here as we explore how scent is taking on an increased significance in our daily lives, elevating product experiences, supporting mental well-being, and sparking new innovation opportunities for brands. Remember the discovery era, Andrew?
I live it every day, Caitlin.
Then you'll know that fragrance is leading the way in helping consumers discover something new. From transportive scents to memory-enhancing aromas to wellness-boosting olfactory experiences, we are entering an era where fragrance is taking on new roles. It's an identity, an emotion, or a story waiting to be told.
It feels like mankind's expectations from scent are greater than ever, and visionaries are responding with some pretty amazing products. I wanted to get into the zone for this episode, so I bought into a fragrance brand called Others. Now, this is a fragrance company that presents itself as a 21st century resilience platform, and they combine scent with sound in a beautifully designed app.
Metaphorically speaking, I am adding to cart, always in need of a new way to relax.
Well, can I interest you in a wellness-boosting olfactory experience, Caitlin? So they got two functional fragrances on offer. Mystic Zingaro, which transports you to a forest to acquire a sense of rootedness, and Red Skies, which would improve your focus, energy, and creative thought. So you apply the scent to your wrist and tune into related soundscapes on the app that make your fragrance journey more intentional, more immersive, and certainly more personal.
The site promises dual sensory experiences to help you sleep, process, focus, and even ponder.
And when does the human race get time to ponder these days, Caitlin? I mean, in the age of the smartphone. So I like to ponder. It allows new connections to be made in the brain, sparking new ideas, new creative thinking.
Sign me up. This is a great example of how progressive brands are utilizing fragrance in new ways, utilizing fragrance to impact mood. Now, we've known for some time that the human's olfactory system has an express link to key areas of the brain that are responsible for our emotions and memories. Now, what's changed, we think, is people's readiness for new and more holistic ways to improve well-being. And coupled with the rise of the discovery era, do check out our episode on that, we have all the conditions necessary for a highly experimental category dynamic, one that targets personal growth and well-being like never before.
It's going to be a lot of fun, Caitlin. And in this episode, we're going to go beyond the beauty counter to access all areas where fragrance is being activated to elevate experiences for today's consumers. And I'm going to be talking to a multi-award winning fragrance expert about how fragrance is evolving in people's lives.
And we'll be getting the perspectives of an industry player to assess commercial opportunities. Now, with 9 out of 10 people telling pollsters that they want to feel more, so-called scent emotioneering is beginning to break into mainstream spaces. Andrew, we could have spent literally hundreds of dollars on testing products for this episode. Future Society got my attention with their commitment to biotech to resurrect flora and fauna that's already been lost to humanity. Then there was Vireo, who claimed to make good feelings. Like others, Vireo targets emotions and energy through scent, color, and science-backed ingredients. Our sensory team were most impressed by Free 00, which stands for freedom and sensuality, which was successfully engineered by fresh citrusy notes and a sweetness from aromatic wood. And just like others, Vireo makes it multi-sensory, linking each scent in its range to a curated Spotify playlist.
I love what Vareo are doing, but I'm aware that our sensory team did struggle to match the fragrance experience to the concept in a couple of instances. But I think this kind of thing is going to happen less as the fusion of fragrance, neuroscience, and technology continues to advance. Fragrance specialists such as Simrise and Givaudan designing fragrances that scientifically boost optimism, enhance relaxation, even influence cognitive function. And then there are new players like Osmo.ai, whose ultimate goal is to improve the health and well-being of human life through smell. And I was lucky enough to get some time with them for the pod. We are joined by Florence Bagneris, who's VP of Fragrance Sales at Osmo. Hello, Florence.
Hi, Andy. First, thanks for having me today. Osmo is a Google brain spin-off and was launched 3 years ago by Alex Wichko, current CEO, with 2 lead investors, Google Venture and Lux Capital. The mission of Osmo is equally exciting and ambitious. It is to give computers the sense of smell. This means to make computers able to digitally record a scent, analyze it, and to be able to reproduce it. Think of how sound and images can be received and shared by electronic devices and the internet. The idea is to do the same thing with scent.
That does open up a lot of possibilities. What would you say is going to be possible in the future that hasn't been possible in the past, Florence?
You might have heard of the plum teleportation. The scent of a fresh cat plum was captured by a computer and reproduced into a fragrance. And this without human intervention. And this experience is allowing us to project into a world where we can save the scents that we love, the scents that make us feel joy, comfort, or nostalgia. And those scents, we could teleport them so someone else can experience them remotely. Or we can also store them so we are able to enjoy them again and again.
Yeah, so a group of friends could go away for a weekend and have the time of their lives, and between them craft a fragrance that captures the essence of that experience.
This is exactly that. The idea is to create those tools that you can bring with you, those devices. You can capture the scent around you and be able to reproduce that scent and to smell it again and again. And that scent will be very unique to the moment that you have experienced. On the contrary of buying a scent that is supposed to reproduce, for instance, the scent of the beach, that is great. You'll smell the beach, but you may not smell the beach you've been to. And those devices will be an enabler for you to capture your own sense.
So, Florence, what I want to understand is AI working on a description alone, or is it tapping into the actual olfactory experience that people have at that time?
And that's a very good question. And AI can do both. So the tool that we have developed, OI, can allow you as a user to type a description, and out of that description to get a scent that will be the translation of that description. And this is something that can be done now. The teleportation that can be done, but for now only in our facilities, can allow the scent around you to be captured and reproduced, but without a description. It's really out of the physical scent. And this, we can hope in the future to have devices to enable you as a person to do that. For the time being, Osmo can do it, and we can partner to do that for you. But you're not able to do that by yourself because those devices don't exist yet.
And I have to ask, Florence, with all this technology, where will human ingenuity still play, if at all?
Yeah, that's a very important question. At Osmo, it is a foundational capability that is powering our tools to create faster, safer, and more sustainable scents. It enables our perfumers and fragrance developers to explore new olfactive territories and to be very efficient. So the goal is not to replace human creativity, but to enhance it.
Fascinating to talk to you, Florence. Now, if anyone wants to reach out, find out some more, how might they do that?
They can just go onto our website, osmo.ai, and click on the community tab, and they will be able to reach us.
It's been great to learn a little bit more about the future of fragrance. That's what this pod is all about. So I really appreciate your time, Florence.
Thank you, Andy.
To continue our aromatic assessment, let's meet one of the Fragrance Arena's leading commentators. We welcome Thomas Dunkley, also known as the Candy Perfume Boy, to the pod. Hey Thomas, great to have you on. Now, I introduced you just then as the Candy Perfume Boy, but I do see that you've evolved. What's the story?
I have. I've changed all of my socials recently to making sense make sense. I fell in love with fragrance a long time ago in my 20s, so I'm no longer a boy. I was very interested in fashion at the time, and I remember smelling the fragrance from Alexander McQueen. He had a fragrance called Kingdom, and I was just utterly appalled by that fragrance and how dirty it smelled. I was really fascinated. That led me down to a rabbit hole of learning about the art and science of fragrance, and that's when I launched myself as the Candy Perfume Boy. But as a writer and educator, I've always wanted to make fragrance accessible. So relaunching myself as making sense makes sense really is a mission statement. It's often a very hidden world that sometimes can be quite elitist, with a very much an approach of pay no attention to the man behind the green curtain. So I want to democratize it, make it something anyone can read about and more importantly, understand without gatekeeping or snobbery. So I want to give people the language to talk about the things they're smelling. And I want people to remember that it's fun. Fragrance is an emotional art form and we should have fun with it.
Yeah, it certainly is. And you've been commenting on the fragrance sector for over a decade, I see. How do you think fragrance has evolved in people's lives over that time?
I think it's just become so much more prominent now. It's always been something people wear and enjoy. It's always been a huge part of the cultural zeitgeist. You know, you can define a decade by the fragrances that were worn just as much as the music that was made. But now it seems that people know more about fragrance. They're much more willing to stray away from the beaten path. They want new, exciting, and unique olfactory experiences, and they're willing to pay the money for it. And we can see this as well, not just in fine fragrance, but also in functional fragrance. People are looking for olfactory experiences that are outside the norm. We can also see much more focus being placed on scent in products such as laundry detergent and deodorants. There are really hugely successful brands that are marketing these types of products as fragrance focused. You look at a brand like Tallow and Ash, making very high quality laundry detergents where the fragrance is the key selling point. They are, they smell as good as a fine fragrance. People aren't happy just being served the same products with scent as an afterthought anymore.
So why do you think fragrances are having a moment right now? Is it about people wanting to be noticed more as they emerge from, the predominant digital spaces where we spend our time?
I think it's multifactorial. It speaks to a rise in individualism and also self-expression. I think fragrance has always been that final accessory that completes an outfit, and now there's simply just so much more choice. And like fashion, fragrance speaks to a person's personality and style. It's also just much more accessible now. Brands that were seen as niche 10 years ago can be found in most department stores. People don't have to travel to London to go and smell something new. And let's not forget that perfume talk is often the start of it for many people, particularly for Gen Z. That there's a realness to TikTok that we don't see on other platforms like Instagram, which is a much more curated platform. There's also an immediacy to it. So people will talk about the latest it scents and they gain traction really, really quickly. So as a result of this, fragrance is often a status symbol, particularly for younger men. With so many luxury products remaining unaffordable to the younger generation, things like cars and clothing, fragrance serves as a really good entry point to luxury. Not everyone can afford to drop 2K on a luxury bag, but they could save for a fragrance that's about $300, $400. I paid a visit to the Salon de Parfum in Harrods recently, and it's usually this very quiet, almost clinical space on the top floor of Harrods, and that's where they house their super luxe fragrances. And every time I've been before, it's been really quiet, almost dead. And I went a few weeks ago, and it was just packed with teenage boys, just circling around brands that you wouldn't think that teenage boys could afford. And they were really excited to smell things from brands like Xerjoff and Bodicea the Victorious, who sell fragrances between 200 and £1,000. So
Wow.
it's a real change, and I think it shows how expensive fragrance has now become much more of a status symbol for young men.
And what's your take on so-called dupes, Thomas? Do you think they're devaluing the industry, and are they any good?
As a counterpoint to the dupe brand proposition, which is we can make fragrances at a much cheaper price, I think there is a really strong argument to say, okay, go and do that, but make something new. It's very easy to go and take something someone has already made and remake it at a cheaper price. So if the price is the problem, then maybe they should go and do something that's creative. And I think that what that's not factoring in is the cost of creativity, because it takes time and it takes lots of people to make a good product from scratch.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's something that the dupe brands don't do because they can't do it.
No, it's a fair point. And our producer, Alex, has a question.
Yes, I do indeed. As a fairly passionate frag head myself, I'd love to get your take on something we're seeing really gain traction in the global fragrance scene, and especially on TikTok. The rise of perfume houses from so-called Swana, the Southwest Asia and North Africa fragrances.
Yeah, I think we've seen an absolutely huge change in interest in this area. It's much more noticeable on the global stage now. What is it that you're seeing specifically?
I think it's such a real boom in this sector and not just locally. I've seen these brands that are making waves internationally. They seem to offer fragrances that balance quality, longevity, and affordability, often at a fraction of the price of other popular niche brands. It feels like they've taken their rich heritage in perfumery and just reimagined it for a global audience. For example, take Latafa, French Avenue, Paris Corner, Afnan, and many more of these brands that were once unknown or niche for the rest of the world. But now you see their bottles popping up on TikTok hauls, even being compared to high-end luxury fragrances. They've seemed to kind of master the art of blending these deep resinous ouds with bright modern accords and delivering powerhouse scents that last for hours in both their dupes and sometimes original scents. Would you say this kind of shift in the broader movement of fragrance is becoming more democratic or breaking out of traditional Western dominance? Or is it more about longevity and affordability?
I think it's a mixture of both. There's definitely an argument for it being a point of difference. The style of fragrance and how it's worn in these areas is so linked to the culture. We've been steeped in a European perfumery for centuries now, so it provides a new olfactory viewpoint, new olfactory stories to be told. So it's something new for consumers. But there is definitely an attraction to the style of perfumery in itself now in the West. The fragrances tend to be stronger and longer lasting. They use much heavier materials, woody materials, oud, rose, things that would last on the skin in a hotter climate. That is something that consumers are craving. They want value for money. If they're going to spend money on a fragrance, whether it's an affordable fragrance or a more high-end fragrance, they want it to last. They want longevity, they want the sillage, the projection. And we see this filtering down straight into the mainstream, where fragrances have very often been branded as intense or extreme, and now we're seeing fragrances branded as extra intense, extra dose. So it's almost that intense and extreme is not enough now. And there are as well in that space lots of very high-end niche brands who are doing very exciting work around longevity and intensity. There's an Omani fragrance house called Amouage who are looking at concentration in a really unique way. Some of their fragrances are 56% perfume oil, which is a really high concentration. And they're looking at how they can tell those stories to customers and give them a new olfactory experience. I think it's quite exciting.
Now, we heard earlier from Osmo AI about the impacts of AI on the industry. Do you have any thoughts, Thomas?
I think AI is really interesting in the fragrance industry because historically it's been a very gate kept arena. So we rely very heavily on perfumers to create the work. And I think AI presents an interesting challenge to that, to take that control away from the perfumers. And there are examples of brands using AI to create fragrance. There was a brand called Etat Libre d'Orange who used AI to suggest combinations of materials to a perfumer for a fragrance they called She Was an Anomaly. There was also a Moschino fragrance, Toy 2 Pearl, which used AI to select ingredients based on their wellness abilities, which is a huge thing at the moment in perfumery anyway. I recently judged a category for the Fragrance Foundation Awards, and a huge amount of those fragrances were talking about well-being wellness. There was some sort of facet around neuroscience and all sorts of things in there. So that's providing an interesting way of approaching that. I think we will start to see it used more in customer experiences to help select, recommend, and personalize fragrance. The Fragrance Shop just launched a platform called Every Human, which is an AI-guided personalized scent service which utilizes AI to develop custom fragrances. This puts the consumer in the position of the perfumer in a way. They get to create the scents based on their personality. And it feeds into this idea of hyper-personalization as well, making things individual for the consumer. It's a number of steps above customizing a bottle or personalizing it, engraving it. I'm really intrigued to see how that takes off. Because where a bespoke fragrance from a master perfumer will cost you tens of thousands of pounds, that's £45. So I think it's a further example of the democracy in fragrance now.
Absolutely. Now, to end, and it's crunch time for you, Thomas, because I'd like to ask if in the world of fragrance you have a favorite.
This is actually weirdly a really easy question for me to answer. I do. Despite having many, many fragrances, the one I will always come back to is Angel by Thierry Mugler. I think for me, it's such a bold signature. It's one of those fragrances that people either love or they hate, which in my view is always the sign of a good fragrance because it's not trying to please everybody. And I enjoy how it straddles the line between masculine and feminine. But in terms of a concept, it perfectly distills the essence of that brand. It is Thierry Mugler couture in a bottle, and I think it's the best thing ever made.
Fantastic. Well, look, we've loved having you on. If people want to get in touch with you, how might they do that?
Sure, they can follow me on Instagram. I'm making sense make sense, and I have a website which is thomasdunkley.com.
Thomas, thank you.
Thank you.
As a sensory scientist, I'm constantly aware of the interconnectedness of the human senses. That one sense affects how information received by another sense is ultimately decoded. Avid listeners might remember that we covered this in our episode on extreme snacking. Fiala pointed out how loudness of crunch impacts perceived intensity of flavor. With more customers looking to fragrance for escape, solace, indulgence, and so on, packaging must step it up. To guide us through the emerging codes and semiotics of scent packaging, I'm delighted to welcome Megan Borner-Powell from brand strategists Huxley.
It's so cool to be on the pod, Caitlin. Thank you so much for having me and for such a dynamic topic as well.
We're happy to have you, Megan. So explain to listeners how you decode the world around you and what makes that important.
That's a really great question. And I think I'll start by just briefly explaining what semiotics is for anyone who's listening who isn't completely familiar with it. So, in an academic sense, we explained that semiotics is a kind of sense making tool. So, it's a methodology or a philosophy that allows us to make sense of visual culture. If we take that to the context of consumer goods, it means that we can uncover the hidden meaning behind every font, every icon or graphic element or color scheme that brands are deliberately putting into their packaging and advertising. So, when we go about decoding the world around us through semiotics, we're able to connect these specific design elements to other things that we've seen in culture to connect the dots and see where that meaning is coming from. It's an important process for brands to consider for a lot of reasons, but fundamentally, it allows brands to be in control of the messages that they're implicitly communicating to their consumers.
It's really interesting, Megan. So, from what I understand, you've spotted synergies between evolutions in scent with the signs, symbols, and structures of high end spirits, right?
Yes, I have. It's definitely one of the design philosophies that brands are adopting at the moment. So, If you think back to the fragrance category and the way that it's traditionally communicated to women, it hasn't had a lot of nuance to it. It's been quite two-dimensional in the way that it sort of portrays womanhood. On the other hand, we see spirits brands trying really, really hard to counter the perception that they're for men, that they're because they have a very harsh sensory profile, or they're for people who have a particularly complex and sophisticated palate. These categories are converging in somewhat of a middle space where they're redefining femininity and kind of resetting the sensory experiences that women feel like they're allowed to have based on their actual realities and their real preferences.
So you have some examples of this convergence for our listeners to enjoy, and you can go to our Instagram page, that's at Impact Makers Pod, to see the fragrance packaging that Megan is mentioning. It's in all of its modern splendor.
I found a tequila brand called Laelia, and it uses a really beautiful perfume aesthetic. I actually thought it was a perfume when I first saw the image of the packaging, which is a very direct invitation to female drinkers, and where they've photographed the product on a mirror, which creates a sense of it kind of floating. It invites women to have a kind of sensory savoring moment of indulgence. And if we take the name Laelia with the two L's, it has a very soft impact. Whereas if we have El Jimador, which is another tequila brand, that feels more masculine. So we instantly see this appeal more to women.
What advice would you offer fragrance or spirits brands in general terms in consideration of some of these advancing trends?
Yeah, sure. So I think the first point I wanted to make is that it's not groundbreaking to suggest that perfume and spirits are a bit behind the times in the way that they're adapting their narratives around women. So whereas traditionally these categories of, or particularly fragrance, has conditioned women to think that they have to aim for a certain kind of romantic relationship, for example, or they have to aim to be their most glamorous self. We're actually seeing that consumers are being given the permissibility to be a version of themselves that they love and that they respect.
Well, it's been fantastic to get your perspective, Megan. I think we'll be buying ourselves flowers and tequila and fragrance after this. So if our listeners would like to pick your brain a bit more, how might they be able to do that?
So they can either find me on LinkedIn on Megan Borner-Powell, or they can click the Talk to Us button on the top right corner of the huxleyglobal.com website.
Thanks, Megan.
Thanks, Caitlin.
Well, it's becoming clear, isn't it, that our fabulously fragrant future is going to forge greater links between scent and human emotions. And my next guest knows exactly how to go about this. So we welcome to the Impact Makers podcast, Nina Pocher, who is a senior scientist with beauty pioneers L'Oreal. Hello, Nina, and welcome to the pod.
Hi, Andy. Thanks so much for inviting me. I'm very excited to be here.
Now, Nina, my understanding is that out of the 5 main senses, it's our sense of smell that leads the way when it comes to determining our emotions, how we feel. So why is this?
So you're right on, Andy. Understanding consumers' reactions and their perceptions is really vital for us in product development and even as sensory researchers. Fragrance can be really powerful in evoking emotions or that sense of smell. And there is a pretty biological basis for this connection. So, our olfactory system links to our limbic system in the brain. But even beyond that, simply, humans and our behaviors and memories can be huge drivers in that emotional connection. So, with the sense triggering to memories, really can associate strong emotions.
You've just shared insights, haven't you, into the impact of fragrances on consumers' emotions at the prestigious Society of Sensory Professionals conference in Pittsburgh. What can our listeners learn from your work, Nina?
So there are really a few impactful takeaways from the work that I was able to present at SSP. Just to give a little bit of background to the listeners on this research. So we aim to explore the emotional and functional connections to a cosmetic balm that was colored with different colors and had different fragrances. So Our key question here with this research was to understand how these sensory combinations impact the performance and really that emotional connection. And what we were able to do was deep dive into the synergy of color, fragrance, and texture combination because, you want to have that perfect mix to evoke the right emotion, right? So, kind of what we uncovered was different sensory elements convey different emotions. And what we saw the most was that fragrance was the most impactful. So, visually, looking at the colors, consumers' initial expectations were kind of set, and that shapes their perceptions to a certain extent. But then when they moved on and smelled the fragrance of the product, it had the greatest influence on what they were feeling and even drove liking of the product and overall perception. So that was really interesting for us to see was there were some visual expectations set, but when it came to the fragrance, they
Yeah.
really had that strong connection.
Presumably, L'Oreal's understanding of the ability to connect nuanced changes in scent to elicit that emotion more precisely is getting better and better. Yeah.
Definitely. And what's interesting is when we're working with our partners at L'Oreal, they may have a target emotional space to be in, but with our research, we can not only validate that emotional experience or space that they're targeting, but maybe even uncover additional emotions that consumers are connecting to that particular fragrance or that particular product. So the research we're doing is not only to validate, but also to explore.
So, Nina, give our listeners some examples of how product fragrances solicit different emotions for consumers.
Absolutely. So, in our study, we had a blank control that was white and unfragranced. And then we had three different combinations of colors and fragrances. And what was interesting is each fragrance was strongly associated to unique emotions. And there was really a sensory story there that was unique to each mix. So, for example, for fragrance and mix number two, the consumers had strong associations when smelling that fragrance to feeling beautiful, confident, peaceful, and satisfied. So, in comparison to mixed fragrance number one, there was a strong association to feeling refreshed. So, you can really start teasing apart the sensory signatures of these fragrances in this cosmetic balm.
This is such an exciting field to be in. So, I'm reading a book by Christine Rosen, The Extinction of Experience, and she writes about the systematic removal of experiences that nourish humanity by technology such as the smartphone. And I've been left thinking how brands like L'Oreal have got the opportunity now to help consumers feel more.
Absolutely. And we're seeing even in the space of sensory, but beyond that, in the cosmetic industry, and definitely at L'Oreal, we're shifting away from just technical performance more into that experience. And we want consumers to have the right experience and to have that emotional connection to the products that we're creating.
This is really encouraging, Nina. Really great to hear about your research. Congratulations on the study, by the way.
Thank
And
you.
great to see L'Oreal raising its game and create, I guess, more meaningful scent experiences for consumers. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
So Caitlin and I are here with Amy Benjamin, Sensory Research Director at MMR. Now, you've been doing your laundry in pursuit of high quality podcasting, wouldn't you say, Amy?
You set the bar very high, Andrew. I'll see if I can match up to your expectations. So you tasked me with an evaluation of innovations in the laundry space, and I've never had so much fun stuffing my washing machine. So I put several brands to the test, and I'm going to report on ranges from Unilever, Tallow and Ash, and one particularly high-end option from Maison Francis Kurkdjian.
So first up, we've got this new range from Unilever, comfort scent boosters that are framed as elixirs. We've heard this word before on the pod. Unilever claims that this range offers 10 times more fragrance versus washing with detergent alone. And there are three in the range: Heavenly Fresh, First Blooms, Summer Bouquet. Amy.
Do you know what? I think Unilever have done a really great job with their fragrance capture technology. Their elixirs really do pack a punch when it comes to the aroma, and this brand for me holds up across the whole experience. So let's start with when I first opened the bottle. I tried their First Blooms scent booster in their range. I love the immediate freshness you get from this laundry detergent. It's like an amplified freshness I've actually never experienced before. So when first pouring out the liquid, you can see the beads infused elixir, like little pink dots suspended in clear liquid. And I think this really helps cue extra fragrance. It's pleasing to see that there's so many in there. It really sets high expectations for the post-wash experience. The aroma is fresh, floral with notes of lime, lily, and rose. So I guess after washing then, for me, this is really where the scent booster nailed it. Sometimes I find with other fabric detergents or conditioners, the fragrance massively decreases after the wash cycle, which can be disappointing. I hung up some of my clothes to dry. When I actually entered the room again, the fragrance was so apparent. The smell of freshly laundered clothes is really impressive. It smells super fresh and floral, and it stays strong throughout and actually throughout wearing your clothes as well that day. So super great.
Next, we have a brand that we've been following for some time at MMR. Based in the UK, Tallow and Ash aim to make wash day a good day with clean chemistry and sophisticated fragrances, with propositions including date night, duvet day, Bahama vibes, and a just-released line of fabric perfumes.
So you've got this date night, and I'm getting a real burst of cherries here. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. So I tried the date night laundry shampoo and the laundry conditioner. And what I noticed immediately is the terminology that they use in this category. I think it's quite clever because they're bringing across terms that you may be familiar with in the hair care space. And it really kind of helps elevate that occasion slightly. It makes you feel like you're caring for your clothes or your linen a bit more than usual. When you open it, as you've just said, the top notes hit you immediately. So you get kind of cherry liqueur and almond. It actually smells like a boozy bakewell. There are also undertones of wood, rose, and patchouli, and vanilla's, I think, recognizable as well.
Now, for our final wash and demonstrating how far beauty brands are influencing household and laundry care, we've got this ultimate detergent from Maison France's Coq de Jean. So if you're not familiar with this high-end fragrance brand, it's associated with perfumes costing upwards of $300. And as part of their Art of Living collection, we have this Aqua Universalis fabric softener described as fresh and ethereal. And it costs, wait for it, £40.
Now, Andrew, I was so excited to try this one because I actually do really want one of their perfumes, but as you say, they're so expensive. So, given this brand is so premium, I was expecting an impact immediately. And the unboxing experience definitely gave me that excitement for what's to come. It was packaged in a clean white box with a very nice satin black ribbon. And when you opened it, you could smell the perfume as soon as you opened that box.
That is strong, Amy. That is over and above.
So it comes in a tall plastic screw top bottle with just a simple label on the side to remind you of the brand. It does look minimalistic, and therefore it does start to cue kind of freshness before you even open the bottle. And as you've just experienced, Andrew, when you first open that bottle, it's super fresh. I really love it. It immediately made me imagine fresh linen. I picture myself in an expensive hotel, or fresh high thread count cotton towels in a high-end spa. You can really smell notes of white musk, which makes you think of soft, fluffy linen, and immediately makes you feel comforted as well. It has fresh floral tones in the perfume, which carry all the way through, combined with strong citrus notes. And these green, zesty, rising top notes work really well in cueing freshness and cleanliness. I was really hoping before washing that the complexity of this fragrance doesn't disappear or dampen when using it. So the result after washing? I'm impressed. It smells really fresh, lemony, not super obvious, which is nice when wearing on your clothes so it doesn't affect other perfumes that you may wish to wear. But it's definitely there as an undertone in your clothes and cues freshness all day long.
Okay, so you've clearly been having the best time, Amy, but which one are you putting at the top of your pile?
This is so difficult because I think all three have performed very well. So I'm going to pick something from every one of them, which is technically cheating. But with the tallow and ash, I really love the language that they're using. So the laundry shampoo and the laundry conditioner. The Comfort Scent Booster Elixir has an amazing scent level post-wash. It's the highest I've ever experienced with a laundry detergent, conditioner, or scent booster. It really does live up to their claim of 10 times more fragrance. I guess here you just have to make sure it's a scent you really like. And I'm a fan of the First Blooms. It's super fresh, it's a little floral, but it heightens that fresh cotton smell that I desire when I wash my clothes. The last one was the Maison Francis Coq de Jean, and it has a bit of an unfair advantage because it's a much more premium priced product. However, the fragrance is really amazing. It's much more layered and complex versus the other two, which is to be expected from this fragrance brand. It makes you feel special when washing your bed sheets with this. I honestly felt like I was in a hotel. It elevates those little moments in everyday life. And for me, that is bringing happiness.
So I guess of all the ones on the table, is that the one you're going to keep, Amy?
I mean, I'm lucky that I got to do this episode. Yes, I will be keeping this and I will be using it to impress my guests when they come to stay.
Okay, well, we will await our sleepover invitations with eagerness, Amy. And thank you for putting these progressive products to the test. And can I just say, it smells amazing in here.
So nearly 2/3 of Western Gen Z say that they buy a new scent a few times a year, and 1 in 5 are influenced by a change in season.
Did someone say Gen Z?
Ah, there she is. Welcome back, Shania. With the future of TikTok still uncertain in the US, it's nice that we can still tap into your insights about what matters on the platform. Now, I warn you, Shania, Amy Thompson from our social scraping team tells me that hashtag Perfume Talk has 2.7 million videos on offer, gaining nearly 40 billion views. That's a lot to smell. Where do we even start?
So let's build on some of your earlier conversations about more intentional fragrance experiences. Here, creator M on the Brain explains how she uses scent to activate different versions of herself by pairing them with affirmations.
Neuroscience fun fact of the day is that you can shift your identity and state of mind with smell, and I'll tell you how. Our sense of smell is the only sense that does not get filtered by the brain. It goes straight to our limbic system, which is involved in memory, emotion, and behavior. And smell also has the amazing ability to rewire the brain, and I personally use this to my advantage by using smell to activate different versions of me. Recently, I've been using Golden Rule by Fleur to activate the successful and abundant version of myself.
A little like Andrew's experience with others. The wonderful thing about TikTok is really how it encourages audiences to pay closer attention to product experiences. Are there brands making more of this opportunity?
Me by Sniff is one such brand. It's a shape-shifting skin scent that's designed to enhance one's natural odour. Here's a clip from a post by Sniffin with Steph.
This is a very dynamic fragrance. This is going to smell very different when you first put it on to the dry down. So if you're going to try this out, make sure you give it some time. The opening for me is where that musky sandalwood, your skin but better quality really shines, where the opening is more of that fruity powdery vibe that I'm not that big a fan of. It's definitely sexy. I think it's perfectly unisex. It's a like for me. I wouldn't say it's a love right off the bat, but I am going to continue to play with it.
Whole body deodorant is one of the biggest product trends right now. Brands from Unilever, Procter & Gamble are being joined by players such as Loom and Mando. And NMR's social team tells me there's been a 700% uptick in searches for whole body deo over the last 12 months. What are TikTokers making of this evolution?
Reactions are mixed, Caitlin. Some creators claim that the whole body deo is the best thing since sliced bread. One such person is Kristen Hoffman, 96, reviewing a new contender in this space.
You guys, it is 115 degrees outside in Las Vegas. I'm getting ready for my workout. I'm in my Pilates princess era. I'm just having a moment of gratitude for this product right here. This is the First Aid Beauty Whole Body Deodorant Cream. You would have told me that I was going to be slathering my entire body in deodorant, I would have never believed you. But if you're anything like me, I don't just sweat in my underarm area. I sweat in my under boob area. I sweat in my girly area. This is coming in so clutch this summer.
In this next clip, we get some of the negative reaction. Here's Pretty Critical.
Let's have a heart-to-heart that will save you some money. You don't smell. Well, 99% of you don't smell. Like, you wake up in the morning, you take your shower, you put deodorant on your armpits, and you don't smell. So what is this whole body deodorant? Like, what are we trying to solve for? Oh, my thighs rub together and it gets sweaty, but does it smell? They're scamming you. They're scamming you, and I'm saving you.
While whole body deodorant has provided fresh momentum for the category, I guess that last video shows that credibility must be earned. And looking into this social data, 48% of social sentiment appears to be negative. Now, we've been talking a lot about fragrance and laundry products. Is there any evidence on TikTok that Gen Z are going near a washing machine?
Absolutely, they are. And some savvy individuals are taking to bargain shop dupes of famous laundry detergents. Recently, household cleaning brand Fabulosa went viral for their collection of products that duped Lush's popular Snow Fairy scent. Creator Tanya L. Mitchell gives us a tour.
This Fabulosa set smells like Snow Fairy and it was only £15. You get the room spray, the ready-to-use disinfectant, concentrated disinfectant, room and fabric freshener, spray and wear, laundry cleanser, fabric softener, bathroom cleaner, and the kitchen cleaner. If you like the smell of Snow Fairy, you will absolutely love this.
Gen Z loves a bargain, but does sustainability still matter?
On TikTok, there will always be creators that make it their business to point out products that could try harder. Morgan L. Keane uses this social to talk about one platform that empowers people to decode ingredients lists.
If you're wanting to learn how to read and understand an ingredient label so that you can find cleaner products, keep watching. These are the exact steps I follow to determine if a product is clean or not. The first thing I do, especially if I'm on the go, is to pull up the EWG Healthy Living app and I'll type the product into the search bar. You can also scan a product if you have it with you, and you can read about all of these different ingredients. The app is super informative, and you can read about all the different ways that this ingredient can affect your body. So this one is linked to endocrine disruption and can interfere with your gene expression, so that's messed up.
Many creators talk about a link between certain ingredients in cases of hormonal imbalances. It's a reminder to manufacturers about the power of social media to keep ingredient integrity in check.
Shall we end on something inspiring for people working in the industry?
We absolutely can. Increasingly topical on TikTok is the act of layering to achieve a more complex and elevated scent experience. Here's a post from Raina Monet to explain.
This is the best way to layer your products to smell good all day. You always want to start off by washing your body in the shower. After using a body wash, use a body scrub because you want to prep your skin. After you shave and you're nice and smooth, you want to apply your body lotion. You want to put your body oil over your body lotion. Then you want to seal in your scent with a nice body mist or perfume.
I may have to get up an hour earlier for that one, Shania. Thank you again for sweating TikTok for our listeners. See you next time.
Thank you, Caitlin, and the ever-reliable Shania. Now, we could have easily made 2 episodes about the future of fragrance, but in the spirit of giving you maximum value, we're attempting to do it in one. And adding some value for us now, I am joined by Dorothy Chaparino, who is the Marketing Director of Fine Fragrance with Man. That's MANE, worldwide leaders in fragrance and flavor design. Hello, Dorothy.
Hi, Andy. Great to be here.
I'd like you, if you can, to tell us how Man supports the fragrance industry.
So, as a whole, we work with brands across all categories of products, including body care, hair care, laundry, air care, and fine fragrance. I lead the marketing team for our fine fragrance division in the US. So, we work primarily on body mist, perfumes, and colognes, but also dabble a little bit in the home care space with candles and diffusers. So basically, whenever you walk down the aisles of Sephora and Ulta, many of the fragrances that you see on the shelves are created by some of our talented perfumers in New York, Paris, and across the globe.
Now, I know as marketing director, you are all over trends. You live and breathe them probably. What are the most exciting and perhaps disruptive trends that you're advising on right now?
When it comes to fragrance, our trends are constantly evolving and changing. I think that's similar in a lot of industries, but some of the movements that we're especially excited about right now are long wear fragrances, passport perfumes, and status symbol scents.
Okay, so long wear. Tell us about that one.
One of the biggest trends that we're seeing right now in the fragrance sphere is this demand for long-lasting scents. And that's really with consumers seeking out personal fragrances that have signature impact, but also stay with them throughout the day and have what we call a big trail or wake. So in other words, they want people to notice their fragrance and they want it to be noticeable for a really long period of time.
Yeah, and what do you think is driving this trend? Is it something about value, perhaps?
Definitely. I think there's a few different things coming into play here, but one of the first being habituation. And that's when your body adapts to a sensory stimulus, in the case, your fragrance. And that's really just your body learning to tune it out. This can lead to anosmia to your own fragrance, which means that even though someone else may be able to smell it, they might smell your fragrance on you, you eventually stop being able to perceive whatever scent you put on. That's just something that our body naturally does.
Yeah, and it's something I can relate to there, Dorothy. So you're onto something there.
Yeah, I think a common example of this, people might be familiar with the old Febreze commercials where they talk about nose blindness, or even this idea of leaving your house, coming home from work and not noticing a smell in your home. But then when you go on vacation and you come back after a long period of time, you notice the smell of your house. Or maybe other people notice the smell of your house. So it's an interesting phenomenon.
That's fascinating. Yeah, and so how is this impacting scent and product design?
Generally, we see a shift from both an olfactive and a product perspective. So, on the fragrance front, consumers are gravitating more towards ambery scents, which use ingredients that are heavier molecules. These are things like woods, resins, vanilla, spices, even. And that goes hand in hand with some of the social media trends that we've been seeing, like beast mode and smell maxing. Both of those involve these hypercharged, amplified scents to really boost your fragrance routine. And then on the product side of things, EDP and parfums are on the rise. So those are up 14 and 43% respectively. And those are typically higher concentrations for the formats. And they are meant to give you a more intense scent profile.
Now, your second trend, you mentioned passport perfumes. Now, we have been referring to this idea of transportive perfumes earlier in the pod. What destinations are in vogue, do you think?
The destinations that I think people are talking about right now are a few different from all over the globe, but tropical destinations are huge at the moment, which really leads to these fragrances with full force fruits, but even solar profiles. So think of things like sunscreen scents. And then another example is the subject of Middle Eastern perfumes, which are a big topic of conversation, especially on social media, TikTok. And those will lead to an interest in richer ingredients like oud, saffron, and leather. And then the last one that I just wanted to touch on was the idea of fragrances hailing from East Asia. The rise of travel to places like Japan and Thailand, Indonesia, even South Korea, coupled with we see an increased representation of Asian leads in film and TV in recent years. I'm sure everyone has seen the new season of White Lotus is going to be in Thailand this year. So we're seeing that consumers are taking more of an interest in being more adventurous with the ingredients that they're looking for in their fragrances. So seeing that there will be an interest in some ingredients like sesame, rice, tea, and matcha on the horizon.
And the Asia acceleration, as I put it when I wrote something recently about beverages, is all over. So yes, in fragrances as well. You mentioned status symbols as well as your third trend area. We had Thomas, our influencer, talking earlier about this. He said that he saw teenagers all over Harrods, the department store in London, and his take was that scent has become a relatively affordable status provider for young people. Are you seeing this as well?
I would definitely agree with that. I think we see something similar in the US where in the department stores around 3 o'clock, instead of putting out the fragrances, typically you'd go to Macy's or whichever department store and they'd be putting out samples. Now they're actually taking them away because the department stores have become so overrun with teens and Gen Z just wanting to get their hands on any fragrance that they possibly can. And we see that overall there's been this broader slowdown in the luxury good market due to inflation and rising cost of goods. So fragrance definitely offers a piece of luxury that's more attainable and more affordable, especially for younger generations. We actually refer to it now as the fragrance effect rather than the lipstick effect. And by this, we just mean that, again, it's that affordable, attainable luxury item that consumers are resistant to give up even during these more financially difficult times.
Yeah, I think it's more evidence, isn't it, that the digital generation, they actually crave sensory experiences, and I guess fragrances at the front of the queue there. Dorothy, for people like myself who've had their interest piqued by these trends, how might they reach out to you?
For listeners that are interested in learning more, they can follow Man on LinkedIn or even over on Instagram at man_1871_.
That's man_1871_. Fantastic, Dorothy. It's been great talking to you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
It's been a fascinating ride through the world of fragrance, Caitlin, don't you think?
I think we've certainly tried to sniff out each area, but there is so much more. We simply didn't have time for seasonal scent forecasts. So according to WGSN, we must prepare for unripe fruits, freshwater florals, and invigorating peppery herbs with the power to uplift consumers arriving in the spring of 2026.
Maybe we can check back then to see what actually happens. And news just in, Unilever has bought the personal care challenger brand Wild, who not only sell on sustainability, but a range of natural scents, including fresh cotton and sea salt, and fresh ginger and lemon. Tasty.
Now, we've promised our loyal listeners an update to our emerging GLP-1 story. These are the medications under brand names such as Ozempic, Wegovy, and Mounjaro that promote weight loss.
Yeah, so in our last episode, we discussed how these medications dampen demand for food and beverage products by suppressing appetite. So they do this by lowering blood sugar, delaying gastric emptying, and creating feelings of nausea. And our guest, Faris, also revealed the emerging science that has found that these medications seem to be disrupting the brain's reward centers, literally canceling cravings.
Which explains why we sometimes hear of users claiming they no longer crave stuff like sweets, alcohol, even tobacco.
Yeah, in fact, one new study has found GLP-1 users have been cured of, wait for it, compulsive shopping. But the latest news that I wanted to share is that another new study has found that GLP-1 agonists significantly impair human taste function.
Okay, so making food taste blander?
Well, that's the implication, isn't it? So the study used a sample of 46 people taking a series of taste and smell tests, and the results revealed that sense of smell was not impacted significantly, but perception of taste was significantly diminished. Again, I think more research is going to be needed here, but we are possibly looking at a triple whammy from these medications: suppressed appetite, reduced cravings, and these diminished taste experiences.
Meanwhile, Coca-Cola has acknowledged this week that, so far, GLP-1s are not a big aggregate factor for the soft beverage industry, pointing to a 1% increase in fourth quarter sales in North America, adding that the company will adapt to anything if it has to. And one thing most manufacturers of consumer packaged goods will constantly be adapting to is people's health preferences.
Yeah, and that's a never-ending story, isn't it? So in our next episode, The Shape of Health to Come, we're going to be musing over exclusive new consumer research that attempts to bring us up to date.
For now, remember to check our Instagram, again that's @ImpactMakersPod, and like and subscribe. And then we'll be Grant in Fragrance. Till next time.
Goodbye.
Bye.